Okay, I'm still trying to get into game as we have been for the last few days. So while we're doing that, I can see my game window up on the monitor above. So I can see if I actually do get in or time out or whatever, and I can give it another try while we're watching the video. And I'll give you updates maybe like in between videos or something like that. But we're going to watch the worst ships of Star Citizen from morphologists. This seems kind of interesting.
Citizen is chocked full of incredibly well-designed and generally cool-looking spaceships, and I would argue it has some of the best-looking ships in the entire gaming industry. Full stop. But even the best designers can make some mistakes, and it surely was bound to happen in the more than 100 release ships that we have today, which is the focus of today's video. That's right, instead of looking at Star Citizen's very best offerings, we're going to be taking a look at a handful of ships I personally see as the least successful executions of an otherwise interesting idea. Sparked by their latest mismark, the Scorpia Centaures. Yeah, spoiler, that one's on the list. Now, of course, I need to add this at the beginning that this is only my opinion, and to be fair, all the ships I'll be taking you through aren't necessarily bad. So if you...
What Morph forgot is the last time he had an opinion, it didn't go very well for him either.
Love them, there's nothing wrong with them, it's just that I personally think that they are the worst of all the ships that we have available in Star Citizen. So the objective here isn't to bring anybody down, but to poke a little fun at the people who make these amazing ships that we enjoy. And
here's the thing, I think that if the A2 stuff didn't happen, the A2 would be on this list. Does he have chapters? No A2.
Hopefully also provide some constructive feedback so that they can improve.
You are not a fan of Morph?
And if by the end you think I did a good job and I deserve it, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and the bell icon so you're notified the next time I post a video. So there are quite a few ships in Star Citizen that can be considered a bit lackluster, whether it be for missing features or for how gameplay has been shaped around that.
Don't you talk about this ship
since its release to make it less optimal. There certainly are a lot of ships that could see some improvement. I'm sure many of you will point out a few, like the Mole, for example, which doesn't really have good multi-crew gameplay around it to make the second and third laser really that useful over just having 3 prospectors. Or, for example, the Herald, whose only function is data running, and that's not even in the game yet. The reason why they and ships like them, though, aren't on this list is because they're just suboptimal or their function isn't yet clear. There's nothing really head-scratching about them, at least to me. No. The ships I'm about to...
I mean, the interior of the Starfarer is a little head-scratching.
...to talk about here are the kind that make you think that they were born from ideas desperately sketched on a napkin by a designer on the toilet at 3 a.m. from drinking too many Red Bulls in order to meet a ship proposal deadline. Number 4 on my list is the Cyclone MT, and it's here not because it's not good. On the contrary, it's actually a really nice little infantry fighting vehicle. I've got one myself. The problem is that for some reason CIG thought that they needed to make this when they already had the Cyclone TR and the Cyclone AA, both based on the same exact chassis. What the Cyclone MT does is combine both of those 2 vehicles' main attributes, having missiles and a single-size one gun, into one much more viable vehicle where it actually mounts the missiles instead on a turret and not fixed to the chassis facing in one direction like on the AA. So this vehicle is effectively better than both the AA and the TR, and there's no reason for you to buy either of those anymore, which is...
I wonder, is CIG able to do something like, hey, the Cyclone AA sucks. Here's a refund and a token for this thing. Because we realized after we made it that it just doesn't fit for the game. It's not a good fit.
That's why a lot of people...
I know they won't do it, but why won't they do it?
Who own them already were pretty upset, and that's why this is such a head-scratcher. Sure, the AA has an EMP, but it's not terribly effective, especially given the range of EMPs and how they work right now in Star Citizen. The only way I see them fixing this is by making the TR and AA variants just a bit better. Maybe give the AA variants some size 5 torpedoes, and maybe give the TR a size 2 instead of size 1. That way at least they're interesting options.
Look who it is!
But this vehicle really isn't that big of a problem, especially when you compare it to the next one on my list, the Cutlass Steel. Now, it's based on a very
spelled
beloved lineup
steel
of
wrong.
ships, joining the Cutlass Red, Cutlass Black, and Cutlass Blue, all very good ships. The problem with the Cutlass Steel is that it's designed to be a dropship, which is supposed to loiter and be present on the front line where it's exposed to direct fire. This is actually shown directly in the advertisement material for the ship. And while CIG did elect to give it a lot more firepower by adding some door guns and an extra turret, unfortunately they didn't give it any more survivability than the base variant, which only has a single size.
And bro, the thing is like, it's just anti-personnel guns. They're not even like good guns.
To shield generator and just
they're hard to
tissue
track
paper
too.
for armor. So what happens when the shields go down is it instantly dies. A better name for this variant probably would have been the Cutlass Coffin. And all this wouldn't have been so bad if it wasn't so darn expensive. It's $260 on the website, making it around $30 more expensive than the Warden Hoplite, which is a far better ship for frontline work given that it has a lot better shields and armor and has a lot more firepower for the pilot. Fixes for this should include giving it a second shield generator and dropping that price. It's not worth $260 for what you get. It's a cheap Drake ship, and that's exactly how it should be reflected on the website. But at least the steel is salvageable, unlike the next ship on my list coming in at number 2.
Try
the
aiming
Rock
with that.
DS, a bigger variant of the base ROC Grey Cat mining vehicle. Now, if you don't know, the base variant was much loved. It's a great stepping stone between hand mining and getting a prospector, which is a lot more expensive. It gives you a way to make some money as a new player. But this Rock DS is a whole nother story. While the concept of having two people in a mining vehicle is a cool one, the way they executed it for the DS is a little bit ridiculous. Instead of giving a second seat inside the vehicle for perhaps mining on a second laser or maybe using a scout drone, they just stuck one on the arm. And then they split the functionality that we had in the ROC between two different seats. The driver.
And then, I'm sure I'll get to this, and then when we complained that it was terrible, they buffed the DS so it had so much more cargo space.
And now the laser operator.
That they were like,
now what you're supposed to get with this is a slightly bigger laser, more storage, and an extra set of wheels. But unfortunately, it's not actually twice as good as the base variant. And because it's bigger, it doesn't fit in most vehicles anymore. And that's not even what's so fundamentally flawed about this thing. The cabin of the base variant afforded some protection for the driver, but with this new arm seat, there's no protection whatsoever. So now they're left to overheat or freeze to death if they're not wearing the right gear. And worse yet, the one that's inside the vehicle has a lot longer oxygen supply than the one in the arm. There's no oxygen supply going to that seat. So they're gonna suffocate if you don't go back to a ship sooner or later. It all just came off as very silly, and unfortunately there's not much they can do to salvage this thing. Maybe make it 3 times better than a base rock, so it's just better than taking 2 rocks out on their own, and maybe you'll have something somebody might want to use. But sadly, it's just probably one of the worst ships in Star Citizen for me. And I had hoped it was going to be the last one we would ever see. But I was wrong, because they introduced the Antares in 318. Now, the reason why it's number 1 on my list isn't because it's worse than the DS. The DS is obviously fundamentally flawed. This thing can be fixed.
I think the Cutlass Steel is the worst.
The problem is that they've had the learning experiences of the earlier mentioned ships, which weren't received well by the community for various reasons. This thing seems to combine all the problems of the previous ships into one package. Let me explain. So it's based off of the RSI Scorpius, which is a very competent ship. It's actually one of the meta ships right now, close behind the Hurricane for 2-seaters. Thanks to it being quick, tanky, and having a lot of firepower. It's got 4 size 3s for the pilot and 4 size 3s for the co-pilot who manages a turret. That makes it very scary to come up against in any other ship. For the Antares, they removed that turret and replaced it with an EMP device and a QED device, which is a quantum entanglement device which restricts anybody in the vicinity from being able to jump away within a given range. And this is where the problems begin. Like the Cyclone MT, they combine the functionality of 2 different vehicles into one, effectively making the existing vehicles feel a bit obsolete. Originally, you could only get a QED device on either a Cutlass Blue or a Mantis, and an EMP on the Saber Raven, the Hawk, the Sentinel, or perhaps even the Avenger Warlock. And if that wasn't already bad enough, the Antares is already better than any of them, given that it's tankier and faster than a lot of ships in the game. Now, CIG seemed to be aware of the fact that this was going to upset the balance and make some ships feel obsolete, and so what they elected to do was split the functionality like with the Rock DS between 2 different seats. Now, instead of the
This
pilot
is so
being able
stupid.
to control the QED or EMP, only the co-pilot could control that functionality. And this might have worked this time if they'd not made the same exact mistakes as they had made with the Rock DS, which is that they just split the functionality between two seats without any thought for what that second occupant's experience would be. At least with the Rock DS's mining laser position, the mining mechanic
I don't think
was
it's
pretty
too hard
interesting and could keep
for the
laser
pilot.
operator interested. But the
I don't think it's too hard for the pilot to do everything. I think it would be too overpowered for one pilot to have all that control.
this co-pilot position on the Antares only allows you to press two buttons.
That's why they
and
did
that's it.
But they left the back seat so boring.
No, really, that's all you can do. Because unfortunately, for some reason, and this is what disappoints me most, is that the designer didn't take the time to
No, I know. That's their argument, is that it would be too overpowered possibly, or whatever, or too hard for one person to do everything. When I don't really buy it. I don't know. I don't understand this thing. It's just stupid. And they went with the whole Star Wars theme on the trailer for it, and it's like we all know exactly what you're doing.
critically
You know?
about what they needed to change with the Antares to make it better suited for its designed purpose. Remember that the original Scorpius's co-pilot seat didn't really need a good field of vision or extra MFD displays because they were always going to be in that gunner position view, which was pretty good, so they only needed to focus on that UI. With this new Antares co-pilot position, that stuff doesn't exist anymore, so what you're stuck with is a very poor field of vision with only a single MFD display and no UI elements to support the function of the ship. That's right, there's no UI element to
None.
tell you the status or functionality of either the QED or the EMP, which leaves you needing to go into third person to decide whether or not it's time to release it or to even see if it's activated. Worse yet, you have no
Oh, right. I'm in this video. This is me and Morph doing this.
radar or target
I
status
forgot about
to
this.
inform you whether or not it's time for you to release the EMP or the
I'm
QED.
flying the
You
ship
can't
right now.
tell the distance or direction people are coming from to help the pilot understand where the enemies are, so you could give them more situational
There I
awareness.
am.
You can't even manipulate the ship's systems to help manage power. And no, you can't operate missile operator mode. That doesn't even work. Not even that. What this effectively means is that you are stuck staring at the back of another seat with an MFD display that shows you no useful information and are completely reliant on the pilot telling you when to release the EMP or QED because you have basically no situational awareness for what's going on. This understandably leaves occupants feeling frustrated and out of the loop, like they're just extra dead weight relying on somebody else to provide any value, and that's not a fun place to be, and it's certainly not
Bro, this was so boring. I was just sitting there taking the shields down so he could press the button so he could feel important, even though I didn't even need him.
somewhere I would want a new friend playing Star Citizen to sit, because I feel like they wouldn't want to play anymore if that's the experience they were introduced to. This is what frustrates me so much about this ship, about this missed opportunity to make the co-pilot position something interesting. As it stands, the Antares is a perfectly good ship in its given role. It can interdict and hold people in position and threaten them.
Tell
It's not a
Morpheus
great
me half the
PvP
revenue,
ship.
it's
not
fine.
going to win one-on-one battles, but it is going to provide a lot of good support. It's fast, it's nimble, it's very tanky, it's going to be good at its role, but the thing is that it's not going to be fun to fly, because you're going to need a co-pilot to sit in the back, and if they're aware of what they need to do, they're probably not going to want to sit back there, because it's just super boring. What they need to do to fix this is pretty obvious, but I also think that they're going to have to buff the other ships that only have EMPs and QEDs, because you can't just add a ship like this and leave other ships whose only purpose is the function you added into one feel like they're just obsolete. That doesn't make anybody happy who already owns those ships, and that includes me. I own some of those ships. And I also want to point out one other thing. If you didn't notice already, all of the ships I talked about in here are variants of a base version that was introduced pretty
true.
successfully. None of these ships were introduced on their own as a first generation of that ship hull, which means that CNG tends to fail when they make iterations, when they make alternate versions of an existing ship. And some of you might just dismiss these ships as lazy cash grabs. I don't want to be so cynical with this. I think that CIG can do better and have shown they can make good variants with like the Cutlass Blue and Red. What I think it is that CIG need to follow through more with their executions and think more critically towards the latter half of maybe the white or gray box stage of whether or not the new variant design is actually going to be fun to use for the new roles that they're introducing. And don't be afraid to talk to the QA team and ask them what they think about the role that you're trying to introduce and whether or not they think it's going to be fun. And really ask them to sit down and think it through. Play it out in your mind.
I don't think
even
they
do
care.
a mock-up to see how things play out. What do you guys think?
I think some ships are made to be sold, and I think some ships are made to be played. It is like sell it now, we'll fix it later. There's not even a UI here, dude. They didn't give any, like, the lack of care and the lack of respect for the people who are spending hundreds of dollars on this is insane.
I think my list is incomplete. If so, what ships would you add or what ships would you take off? Did you agree with my points or did you disagree? Whatever you might think, I want to know what your thoughts are down below. And if you like the video, you know what to do. And one more thing. If you guys have a TikTok account, I just started one, and if you follow me in the next month, you'll have a chance to win a cutter plus a game package. So if you guys are interested in that, head on over and follow me. If not, no worries. I know TikTok isn't for everyone. See you in the next one.
All right. Well, thank you, Morph. That was a cool thing to put together. The worst ships in Star Citizen. Did he miss any? Man. I still hate I just hate the Connie interior. He mentioned the Herald, but it just doesn't have its gameplay. So like that's different. He had mentioned that in the beginning of the video. But the MSR has some problems with it, right? So yeah. Kind of crazy. Nomad, I hate the Nomad. Yeah, I hate the Nomad. The Nomad was an example of where they were trying, like, a power creep situation, very similar, I think, to the Antares, but with starting chips. They called it a premium starter, right? Remember that? We talked about that earlier in the stream today. That one was bad, too, but good video, Morph. Thank you for that. And, yeah, the worst ships in Star Citizen.